two young men walked into a Beverly Hills mansion and opened fire on their own parents. The world thought it was greed. They claimed it was survival. What happened next became one of the most controversial trials in American history.
You are listening to Criminal Cases Journal. Real stories from the darkest corners of criminal history. Some names have been changed, and some tapes were never meant to be heard.
August 20th, 1989. Beverly Hills, California. Inside the sprawling $4 million mansion on Elm Drive, the Menendez family was winding down for the night. Jose and Kitty Menendez sat in the den, watching television. Lyle and Eric were nowhere in sight. According to the brothers, they had spent the evening at the movies, watching Batman, before stopping for late-night cheesecake at a nearby cafe. But at some point, their path took them back home. Shortly after 11 p.m., neighbors would later recall hearing what they thought were fireworks. But inside the den, the reality was far more brutal.
What's the problem? What's the problem?
I killed my parents.
Pardon me? What? Who? Are they still there?
Yes.
The people... What?
No.
Were they shot?
Yes.
They were shot?
Yes.
What happened? I have a sheriff at First Anonymous.
What happened? Who is the person that was shot?
My mom and my dad.
Your mom and dad?
My mom and my dad.
Okay, hold on a second. Okay, we're on our way over there with the ambulance.
Jose was shot point blank in the back of the head. Kitty tried to run. She slipped on the polished floor, falling near the couch. She was shot multiple times, injuries so severe, detectives later described the scene as beyond anything they'd witnessed.
Hello, this is police department.
Yes.
Okay, I want you to come outside. Okay, you come out the front door.
I gotta tell my brother.
You tell your brother. Everybody that's... Come outside.
Okay.
15 rounds fired from two 12-gauge shotguns. In a matter of seconds, the Menendez parents were dead. By the time the gun smoke settled, the killers were gone. No forced entry, no sign of a robbery, just two lifeless bodies. Neighbors later recalled hearing loud bangs earlier in the night.
It sounded like...
But in a city where fireworks, backfiring cars, and loud parties weren't uncommon, no one thought to call police right away. Jose had been struck multiple times in the head and torso, with such force that investigators believed the weapon had been fired at close range. Kitty, found nearby, had also suffered multiple gunshot wounds. The violence suggested intense rage, far beyond what one might expect from a simple robbery. At first, investigators suspected a professional job.
No signs of a break-in or a burglary, only the bodies of entertainment executive Jose Menendez and his wife Kitty in the family TV room.
Jose Menendez was a successful entertainment executive with ties to powerful figures in the business world. Detectives openly considered whether this could have been a targeted attack, a so-called mob hit, or revenge tied to his business dealings. The fact that nothing of major value appeared stolen only deepened the mystery. In those early hours, no one imagined that the investigation would soon take a shocking turn, one that would shift suspicion in a direction no one saw coming. In the weeks after Jose and Kitty Menendez were found in their Beverly Hills home, their sons Lyle and Eric seemed determined to move forward. But their version of moving forward was anything but quiet. What followed wasn't the behavior police expected from two grieving young men. Almost immediately, Lyle purchased a Porsche, a Rolex watch, and invested in a high-end restaurant. Eric an aspiring tennis player, hired a personal coach and traveled extensively for matches, often in luxury. Together, they went on expensive overseas trips, bought designer clothes, and stayed in the most exclusive hotels. Their spending spree totaled hundreds of thousands of dollars within just a few months. At first, the media painted them as heartbroken heirs coping with unimaginable loss. But as reporters began digging into their post-tragedy purchases, the tone shifted. Headlines began asking, were these the actions of grieving sons, or something else entirely? Night after night, local news ran stories about their sudden wealth and lifestyle, fueling public suspicion. In televised interviews, both brothers appeared calm, even confident. Lyle, dressed in crisp suits, spoke in measured tones. Eric, softer spoken, avoided specifics about the night of the tragedy. Viewers at home couldn't help but notice. There were no visible signs of deep grief. For some, that composure was suspicious. For others, it was simply the way the wealthy handled public attention. But behind the scenes, investigators were quietly connecting the dots. The brothers' spending habits, combined with their demeanor in public, would soon move them from grieving sons to prime suspects. By late 1989, the investigation into Jose and Kitty Menendez's deaths had stalled. Then, out of nowhere, a break came. Not from forensics or eyewitnesses, but from a private therapy session. What unfolded next would become one of the most controversial moments in criminal case history. Eric Menendez had been struggling under the weight of what happened. He began seeing Beverly Hills psychologist Dr. Jerome Oziel. During one of those sessions, Eric admitted, in detail, that he and his brother Lyle were responsible for their parents' deaths. Dr. Oziel, following state law at the time, recorded some of their conversations, but the recordings didn't stay private. Dr. Oziel's girlfriend, Judalyn Smythe, overheard parts of the confession. After their relationship soured, she contacted police, telling them she had information that could blow the case wide open. Soon, detectives were in possession of explosive audio, Eric's own voice recounting the night of the killings. With the tapes in hand, investigators now had something they'd been missing for months: direct, personal admissions. But it wasn't simple. Defense lawyers argued the tapes were protected by doctor-patient confidentiality. After a heated legal battle, much of the content was ruled admissible in court. It was enough for police to make their move. On March 8, 1990, officers arrived at the Beverly Hills home where Lyle was staying. Just after 10 a.m., he stepped outside and was met by detectives who informed him he was under arrest. He was handcuffed on the driveway, the quiet of the neighborhood broken by the hum of news helicopters overhead. Eric, meanwhile, was thousands of miles away in Israel, competing in a tennis tournament. The moment he heard his brother had been taken into custody, he knew it was only a matter of time. Days later, he boarded a flight back to Los Angeles. On March 11, 1990, Eric Menendez walked into Los Angeles International Airport and was met by waiting police. He surrendered without incident, was handcuffed, and escorted to the Beverly Hills Police Department. The arrests set off a media storm. Cameras followed every step, from the moment the brothers were booked to their first court appearances. The stage was set for a trial that would grip the nation, sparking debates about wealth, privilege, and what really happened inside the Menendez home. By 1993, nearly 4 years after their parents' deaths, Lyle and Eric Menendez were about to face a courtroom and the world. This wasn't just a trial. It was a televised spectacle, broadcast into living rooms across America. The first trial began in July 1993 with cameras rolling. Millions tuned in daily to watch testimony that was as dramatic as it was disturbing.
You and your brother killed your parents over 4 years ago, correct?
Yeah, over 4 years ago.
On August 20th, 1989, you and your brother, as your brother testified, burst into the family room of your Beverly Hills mansion. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, you surprised your parents while they were watching television and blasted them until your pump shotguns were emptied of ammunition, correct?
Objection, this states the evidence.
Overall? No, sir.
Did you burst into the family room?
Yes, we burst into the family room, but they weren't watching TV.
What were they doing?
They were standing when I saw them. They weren't watching TV.
Both of your parents were standing?
Yes.
Where were they standing?
Behind the coffee table in front of the couch.
Did you see them rising to their feet?
No, I couldn't see well in the room, but I never saw them rising.
Who was on the right and who was on the left?
Facing them,
Yes.
my dad was on the right, past the coffee table, and my mom was on the left.
Now, in direct examination, you've been saying that you saw two figures, correct?
Yes.
You knew it was your mother and father, isn't that right?
I knew it was my mother and father. I couldn't see their faces. I couldn't see exactly who they were until after they were dead, but I knew that it was them.
Was the television set on?
Yes.
Was there a light coming from the television set?
Yes.
So you saw who you were shooting,
Well, I knew it was my parents.
and in particular, you knew you were shooting at your mother.
I don't even remember. I don't think so.
You don't think that you knew you were shooting at your mother?
When I was shooting, I wasn't thinking at who I was shooting at.
Where did you aim your gun?
Just right in front of me as soon as I walked in the room. And I wasn't thinking this person's here, this person's there. Whoever was in the room, wherever they were, I was shooting at.
Were you closing your eyes when you were shooting?
No.
You were looking at what you were shooting at.
I suppose.
Now, you've testified here that as a youngster, you walked in your sleep. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, I did many times.
Are you telling these juries that you were sleepwalking when you shot your parents?
No, I was awake. It's just that as soon as I went into the room, the gun went off and there was fire, there was smoke, and it was so chaotic that I just didn't. I don't have a great memory of it.
Now, you entered the room first, correct?
Yes.
Now, you say the gun went off. Did you fire that gun?
No, I fired the gun.
Now, you shot until your gun was no longer loaded, correct?
I shot everything I had.
And then, what did you hear or see after you had finished firing all of your ammunition?
I heard a noise coming from what was my mom.
Now, you've described noises in direct examination. Would you describe for these jurors the noise that you heard coming from your mother?
I don't even remember what the noise was. I know that I heard it because I ran out of the room just to get away from there. But I can't even tell you what it was.
Did you describe to Dr. Oziel that it was moaning coming from your mother as she was trying to crawl?
No, I never said that. I read that in his notes. I did tell him she was trying to crawl. I found that out from my brother afterwards when I talked about it. But I didn't see anyone crawling in that room.
Would you describe for the jury what sound you heard? How would you characterize that sound?
Overall, I guess I would characterize it as a moaning simply because she was dying, and that's what freaked me out, and I just wanted to get away. But I can't remember how it was or the way it was.
Was your mother crying?
No, it wasn't a crying sound.
You indicated that your father said no as you entered and started to shoot?
Yes.
Did your mother ever say anything?
No, she never said a word.
She didn't have a chance to say anything?
I guess not.
Now, you said that you were freaked out when you heard this noise, this moan from your mother.
Yes.
Is that right? And you're so freaked out that you went to your car and you had the ammunition box and you're pulling out ammunition so that when your brother came, you handed him ammunition. Isn't that right?
No, that's not why I ran to the car. As soon as that happened, I just got out of there and I just ran, and I ran out toward the car. And as soon as Lyle got there, then we started scrambling for shells.
As soon as Lyle got there, didn't he testify that you handed him a cartridge?
I did.
So you had been in the car and you're pulling out ammunition when you got to the car. You got to the car first, correct?
We got there at basically the same time.
So you went directly for the ammunition, didn't you?
No, that's not what I was thinking. As soon as I ran out of the room, I just ran, and I can't answer your question. I can't answer the thoughts that were going through my mind at that time.
Where was the ammunition located in your car?
The ammunition was in the trunk of the car.
The trunk?
Yes.
So you went to the trunk of the car and opened up the trunk?
No, the trunk was already open.
You had left it open?
Yes.
And you went to the back of the car and you went to get the ammunition and you handed the ammunition to your brother?
At that point, I definitely was scrambling around for shells and handing it to my brother.
Why?
Because I knew that he was going to go back in the room.
You left the room first, correct?
I guess so, yes.
And you took your gun with you?
Yes.
How would you know that your brother would return to put the coup de grace into your mother?
Rephrase the question.
I didn't know what my brother would...
Rephrase the question, please.
How did you know, as you ran out of that room after you heard your mother moan and apparently try to crawl, how did you know that Lyle, your brother, would return to finish killing her off?
Objection, point of question,
Overruled.
I didn't see her crawling. When I left that room, I just wanted to get out of there, and I ran outside. And when Lyle came, that's when we went to the back of the car. And at that point, I knew what was going to happen.
Without any words spoken, you knew that your brother...
There were no words spoken.
There were no words spoken.
No.
And you were in there, in the trunk of your car, getting the ammunition already, correct?
Already when?
Before Lyle arrived at your car.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
So you were standing there doing what?
Lyle was right behind me. It wasn't as if I stood at the car and then he showed up. He was right there. And at that point, we just went to the back of the car and I knew what was going to happen.
You just instinctively knew that your brother would return to finish killing your mother?
Yes.
And so you went into the trunk first and pulled out the ammunition?
Yes.
And handed how many rounds to your brother?
1.
Why only 1?
I think because as soon as I handed him, I was scrambling. The shells and everything was all over the place. And as soon as I picked one, I gave it to my brother and he just ran in. I guess if he would have stood there and asked for more, I would have given him more. I don't remember the feelings that I was feeling right then.
So after you handed him 1 cartridge, were you searching for others?
I don't think so. He just started running in.
And did you then follow him?
Not at first, but I soon followed him.
And you heard the final shot?
Yes.
And you were at the door of the den at that point?
I was coming toward the den. I didn't want to go into the den.
Did you look inside the room?
I don't remember.
You don't recall that?
I don't recall that. I remember hearing the shot. I remember being in the foyer. I don't recall seeing into the den.
After you heard the shot, what did you see or hear?
Lyle coming out of the den.
Did he have his rifle, his shotgun with him?
No.
And you've heard the coroner describe 10 areas of wounds to your mother and 6 to your father, correct?
Yes.
Now, you and your brother were deadly accurate with your shotguns that night, weren't you, for not being able to see very well?
Objection, your results are complete.
Overall.
I have no idea.
Did you see your mother move at all after you started to shoot at her?
I didn't see anything after that.
You saw nothing?
I saw nothing. I saw the fire of my gun and this stuff coming out of it, and I did not see anything. I mean, I guess that's why shots just went all over the place, out the window, on the side. I just didn't know what was happening. I didn't know where I was firing, or I really wasn't aware.
Mr. Menendez, there were only 2 shots that missed. You heard the testimony about the 2 panes being broken and the French
Yes.
doors behind where your mother and father were seated?
Yes.
So there were 2 misses out of all the shots that you and your brother fired.
Apparently.
Yeah, phrase it as a question, please. It is a question.
Is it your understanding that there were only 2 misses?
Apparently.
I'm going to object to the point because you haven't seen staff and everything.
Overall.
Were your parents disabled after the initial shots? That they were they stationary targets for you?
Object to the point of the question. Vague.
Overall.
I have no idea. I just started firing as soon as I came into that room, and whoever was in that room, I was going to fire at. And I didn't think this is who this is, or who this is, who this is. And I just started firing, and apparently I was mostly shooting at my mom. I didn't know. I wasn't aware. I wasn't thinking about it. All I was thinking is, I gotta fire every shot with my gun.
You weren't arrested for your crimes for nearly 7 months, were you?
Yeah, I guess it was that much amount of time.
You and your brother nearly got away with it, didn't you?
No, I didn't think we'd get away with it from the second it was done. I thought we'd be arrested that night. I was actually surprised.
You never turned yourself in the 7 months that you were free on the streets, knowing that you had killed your parents, correct?
No, I never turned myself in.
In fact, you conspired with your brother to lie at every bend and turn, to the police, to your relatives, to newspaper people, to everybody, correct?
Object to the point of the question.
Rephrase the question, please.
You conspired with your brother, did you not, to lie to people about your involvement in the killings of your parents?
Object to the point of the question.
Overruled.
No, it was very clear that we wanted to lie to the police because at that point, that night, we didn't want to get arrested, and so we were scrambling around to find a reasonable enough explanation of where we could have been. But after that, we never talked about it. We never talked about what we'd say to to my relatives or to anyone else.
So after the first day, you conspired to lie to the police.
Of that word.
Overall.
What? Be easier. What do you mean by conspired?
You talked to your brother, you agreed that you and he would lie to the police.
Yes.
And after that, did you have any other discussions about lying to anybody, about what you did?
No, we didn't. We didn't discuss it. I mean, he just, I guess, assumed that I would not tell anyone that I did this.
After that, it came naturally.
No, it didn't come naturally at all. I tried to tell Craig. I told Dr. Oziel. I tried to tell another cousin of mine. It actually was very difficult around my relatives. But to anyone else, I certainly wasn't going to tell.
You lied to your relatives, correct?
In a sense, I did.
And to I believe your brother testified that 2 nasty men from the LA Times came to interview you and your brother at the Calabasas house. Isn't that correct?
They weren't nasty. They got nasty during the interview because they thought we had done it. And we were trying to say we hadn't done it until they got nasty, but I don't know if they were nasty people.
Now, when you say they got nasty because they thought you did it?
They had some misinformation, and I was denying the misinformation, but I knew what they were getting at, and so they were beginning to get angry.
Now,
Your
you,
Honor, at this point, I'd like to report.
No, let's move on to something else. Back to this.
Mr. Menendez, you testified that you thought your parents couldn't die and they looked like wax figures after you and your brother shot them, correct?
Yes.
Now, despite the auditory problems that you claim to have, you understand now that your mother and father are in fact dead and could never go out into the sunshine again. Do you understand that?
Objection, Your Honor, I'd like to report.
Overruled.
Do you understand that, sir?
Yes, I'm very clear about that.
Now, you have testified that since being in jail, you have only been in the sunshine 10 times. Isn't that right?
I'm not clear on the number. About 10 times, very few times.
And you testified to that on direct examination, correct?
Yes.
Did you want the juries to feel sorry for you that you couldn't go out into the sunshine?
No, not at all.
Now, you and your brother have made many statements about how bad your parents were. Would that be fair to say?
I would.
Overruled.
I would say I said a lot of things that happened to me and how I felt about them.
Now, because you and your brother killed them, they're not around to tell their side of the story, are they?
No.
The defense painted a portrait of two young men living under years of emotional and physical abuse at the hands of their parents. Abuse, they claimed, had driven them to an act of desperation.
I still can't believe it. I'm sitting on the stairs afterwards thinking the police are going to be there in seconds. They've got roving patrol.
And people, many people did hear the shots. Many neighbors came in and said they heard all these shots, but nobody called because they just figured this is Beverly Hills, this doesn't happen in Beverly Hills. Our feeling was not, we'll just explain what happened and it'll be okay. We were very stunned, and we felt that we would go to jail, obviously, and it was a selfish reason to just not want to have to go through that.
The prosecution countered with a much darker theory: cold-blooded ambition and a desire for their family's fortune. After months of testimony, the juries, one for each brother, could not agree on a verdict. Both panels were deadlocked, resulting in a hung trial.
This is awful. The most awful thing I've ever heard. But what if it had been the kids? I don't know why I said that, but I must have had some basic instinct in the back of my head that told me that might be the case. I had nightmares. I had nightmares about it. I could see that house, and I could see them taking them out, as I saw on TV.
I was so afraid. I was running downstairs and I was crying, and my mother was on the couch and she had been drinking, and she said, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, nothing, you wouldn't understand." And she said, "Oh, I understand. What do you think, I'm stupid?" And she told me that she knew, that she had known all my life what my father was doing. And Lyle said to my mother, "Are you going to let this happen?" And she said to him, "You ruined this family." A few days before, I had said to myself, "I'm never going to let my father touch me again." After I told Lyle that it had been continuing on, I said to myself, "I'm never going to let him touch me again." And just before the shootings, my dad told me to get to my room and that he would be there in a minute. He was going to come up and there was going to be sex, and it was like an explosion in my mind. No.
In 1995, the case returned to court. But this time, the rules had changed. The judge barred television cameras, removing the spectacle of the first trial. Key elements of the brothers' abuse claims were also restricted, weakening their defense. Without the emotional weight of their earlier testimony, the jury's perception shifted. On March 20th, 1996, Both Lyle and Eric Menendez were convicted of first-degree murder with special circumstances, meaning they had acted deliberately and with planning. In July 1996, the brothers stood side by side as they were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. There would be no second chances, no release dates. Their futures would play out behind prison walls. More than 3 decades after the events of August 1989, the Menendez brothers' case was thrust back into the spotlight, not by the courts, but by streaming television. Netflix released a dramatization alongside a fresh documentary series in 2024, blending archival footage with reimagined scenes. Younger viewers, many hearing the story for the first time, began re-examining the brothers' claims of abuse. On social media, a new generation questioned whether the brothers had been unfairly portrayed in the 1990s. Hashtags trended, videos dissected trial testimony, and sympathy began to shift. Some argued the brothers were survivors of a hidden traumatic home life. Others maintained the original jury got it right. In May 2025, the legal system returned to the Menendez case. After years of appeals and changing legal standards, their sentences were modified to 50 years to life, with the possibility of parole. The brothers will now be eligible for release in the 2040s, though whether they will ever walk free remains uncertain. The Menendez story has spanned decades, 2 trials, countless headlines, and now a new chapter. For some, it's a cautionary tale about greed and violence. For others, it's a story about generational change in how we see family, trauma, and justice. But one thing is certain: their story will be told and retold for generations to come.